This episode of FilmRiot is brought to you by Domain.com. Welcome to FilmRiot Mondays. We got some cool stuff today, but first we're going to answer some questions. So let's just do it.
Mail sack, taking a look in Riot's mail sack.
Do you have any tips on color grading? I always find it hard not to overdo my shots. I've done that a lot too. I mean, lately I'm getting a bit better with it over time, but for a long time I just over color corrected the crap out of all my shots. In fact, if you go and look back in earlier FilmRiot episodes, you'll see that a lot. I just went way overboard with the grading and actually ruined an image that was pretty decent to start with. So one thing that's really good with that is once you've done your color grading, don't just be finished. Walk away. Go do something else. Leave it for maybe even a day. Then come back and look at it with fresh eyes and you'll be surprised how much you don't like it. Or maybe do. Another good thing is to watch the highlights. Don't push the color correction so much that you're blowing things out to where it's pure white. I mean, there's times where you're gonna want that, but sometimes it kind of kills the image. Same with the blacks. You want to retain detail in your actor's face or whatever it is you're trying to focus on. So be careful you don't push it too far. What was your favorite soundtrack song in 2011? Soundtrack song specifically? I don't know, but I'll go with the soundtrack as a whole, and I would probably say Planet of the Apes was my favorite soundtrack last year. How often do people ask you to film stuff, expecting you to do it for free? I used to get it a lot, but now not so much, but I really don't do much client work anymore. Now I do almost all original stuff with Triune, but I still do freebies every now and again. I just did one a few months ago, actually, and I did it because it wasn't exactly a freebie. There was an exchanging of things. This person was extremely talented, and I really wanted to work with them and learn from them, so that's what I got out of the deal. Not all the time you're gonna do a freebie and get a monetary compensation. You get compensated in other ways. Exposure, taking your career to the next level, networking, things like this. So don't think it always needs to be money for it to be worth you doing it. Evaluate each job and take it as it is to advance your career one way or another, but also don't get taken advantage of either. If there's nothing in it for you to do for free, really no need. I wouldn't, unless it's a nice favor and you're just being a nice person. What a nice guy. Do you plan out the sketches with the shot list or vague storyboards, or do you just do it on the fly? Back in the earlier days of FilmRiot, I would plot things out, not in story form ways, but I would take the script and I would scribble in the margins what sort of things I needed to get to make sure I got all the shots I needed to do. But over the time, doing it as much as I do, I finally gotten to the point, happily, to where I don't plan anything at all. All I do is I have the script, which is basically just dialogue, and then I just make everything up as I go along, which I started doing on purpose a little while ago because I wanted to use it as a training tactic for me, and it has. I've learned a lot. I mean, it's hurt a few short films in the past by doing it, but you know, failure is the bridge to success. So those things that I failed at really taught me a lot, and now, you know, I do a lot better at just coming up with things. So I would advise a lot of you to do the same. Make a short film, start at first by planning, and once you get the hang of planning, don't plan at all. Just go shoot something and see how it comes out. You'll be surprised how much that does to help you internalize your entire story in your head, and everybody else is like, what are you doing? But everything's right here for you, and that is a big thing if you want to be a director. Ryan, do you think image stabilization lens is needed on something like a Steadicam? Not as much, but still yes. I watched a Steadicam shot with the DSLR and it did not have stabilization, and I still saw a little bit of that flicker happening. The stabilization does a lot to clean all that up. The sensor on these cameras is really, really freaking sensitive, and any kind of bump gives not just a wiggle, but this really ugly shake that's glaringly obvious and very amateur looking. So for me, if I'm using a DSLR, I always want it to have image stabilization unless I'm locked down on a tripod. As a young new filmmaker, is it best to start out making short little 5-minute films or to work yourself into longer 30-minute films? I think it's actually better to do little snippets like a 2-minute or a 5-minute. Once you get a little longer, it gets pretty daunting. You start to lose your story and your point, because telling that story, telling that arc, telling those characters is actually a pretty big thing. So to start out small with like a 2-minute or a 5-minute, it's sort of like having this giant safety net. It's this really short thing, and if it doesn't come out right, who cares? Just do another 2 or 5. Once you have those 2 and 5s locked down, then you can move on to the bigger ones and you won't get lost. You won't drown in the deep end of story and the deep end of coherently telling a visual story. That's actually very difficult, and these 2 and 5 minute ones will really help. And like I was saying before, after you've locked down the 2 and 5, maybe do a few without any planning at all. Just go out and shoot it. Maybe even without a script, and see how well you do. Once you have that locked down, then work to bigger and better. That way you're not wasting your crew and cast time if you're not quite ready for that yet. How do you deal with negative criticism online? If you're gonna put yourself out there in any way, you gotta know there's gonna be a lot of negative criticism. There's two types. There's the constructive criticism, which is negative on what you do, and then there's just the hateful venom that gets spat online because of the anonymity. For the hateful venom, you just gotta ignore it. You gotta realize there are a bunch of unhappy trolls and just ignore completely. But the constructive negative criticism is vital to you growing as a filmmaker. Our show has grown and gotten better, and I've increased as a filmmaker because you guys are there to call me out when we do something stupid. A great example is when we first released the War short film. A bunch of people were complaining about the sound effects, and I was like, what are they talking about? It sounds good. But then I went back and listened to it, and I'm like, you know what? Those gun sounds do sound like crap. So we redid all the gun sounds and re-released the short film as its own, and the community was right, and they helped make the short film 20 times better. So don't get your undies in a bunch when somebody doesn't like something. Take into consideration what they said, and it could really help you grow. Sometimes they're wrong, but sometimes there's some really, really great feedback. But that's it for the questions, really good ones this week. And now, watch this.
Now it's time for a fantastically terrible moment in cinema.
Putain.
That was both fantastic and terrible.
If you're setting up a website to start your own business or a blog, domain.com is the place that you should go for your next great idea. You've heard me say it a bajillion times, and you heard me say I've said it a bajillion times. Domain.com makes it easy to get your domain name and website up and running like an Olympic fast person. Blog, create a website, showcase your portfolio, make the moolah, set up a new email. There's so much crap that you can do. It's just wonderful. And the guys at domain.com love FilmRiot, and they love you, and they want to give you 15% off, as you've heard before. So you can get that 15% off of web hosting and domain names by using the coupon code FilmRiot when you're checking out at domain.com. So don't forget, use the coupon code FilmRiot. When you think domain names, think domain.com. Go, do it. Domain.com. Scurry along. Go, be gone.
Logo.
So that's it for this episode. Great questions this week. A lot of fun to answer them. I hope you guys dug it. Next week, we're actually going to try a new segment, see if you guys like it. We're going to try to do some new and fun stuff on Mondays, a little more interactive-tastic, not just question and answer. We'll see how it goes. But I'll see you guys next week. Until then, be safe and what?
Watch movies.
Watch good movies, not just movies, because those could be bad. Don't get it twisted like a pretzel.